Moon's community and my community have come together to ask us a bunch of questions about cross stitch. I'm gonna do my first little stretch break in about 10-12 minutes, but I think we have time to get into our first question before then, if you're ready.
Absolutely.
So we'll start off with a question that both Des and Tiddy asked, and that is, what got you into cross stitch in the first place? Was it something specific you saw? So
you can definitely start, because
Okay.
mine is going to be a short answer.
Mine is also a short answer because the fact is I don't remember. I learned to cross stitch when I was a little kid. So I used to do like a lot of plastic canvas and needlepoint. My mom did needlepoint for a really long time. So like I learned to cross stitch when I was a wee child. So I don't remember what first made me want to learn, but this most recent time that I got back into it, it was because Toot picked it up again, and Toot picked it back up again because she wasn't really able to comfortably crochet anymore and wanted something to do with her hands. So she got back into cross stitch, and then I saw the cool stuff that she was finding on Etsy, and I was like, I want in on this. So yeah, that's how I first learned, and then that's how I got back into it.
Yeah, and my very quick and easy answer is it's Toot and DH's fault.
Yeah, 100%.
Because they were getting into cross stitch, and of course they were like finding all of those cute patterns on Etsy and showing me, and I was like, those are very nice pictures and I would love to do it. But you know me, as an ADHDer, I'm sure that other people with ADHD can relate, it's very easy to find a hobby and buy a bunch of shit for it and then do it for 2 weeks and never touch it again. Toot says #blame Toot. Absolutely. Toot is entirely to blame for DH and I's descent into cross stitch.
Yep.
What Toot and DH told me to kind of like sell me in on it was basically, you know, compared to other crafts, cross stitch is very cheap. You only have to get the floss and the fabric, and that's pretty cheap because you can usually use it for like multiple projects. And I was like, you know what? I'm in.
I am never gonna financially recover from this.
And
I mean, it wasn't a lie. It is one of the cheapest hobbies to try. You know what I mean? Like it can definitely get expensive down the line, but to just try it for the first time, it's one of the cheapest. What was your first project?
Like my first pattern was from by Meg C on Etsy, and it was the Ghost of Doom, I think she calls her pattern.
Witchy Ghost of Doom, I think it was.
Yes, Witchy Ghost of Doom. It did turn out very cheap because it was a pattern with 4 colors in it, I think, or 5, like super minimal amount of colors. I never framed it because I had cut the Ada too short. So it would be quite a pain to like finish into something. And also like it's full of visible flaws, but I'm keeping it as a, you know, memory.
So my answer is, if we go back to when I first learned to cross stitch, I have no idea what it was. I've no idea. Like it was so far in the distant past. But this most recent round, when I picked it back up, the first thing I did was a mini acorn wreath by Mama Witch cross stitch, and it was super small. It's like, it's only like maybe 2 inches around on 14 count Ada. But so when Toot picked it back up, they picked up a kit just to see if like they wanted to get into it, and then they decided that yes, they did. So I was like, I'm gonna try the same thing. I'm gonna pick just like a little pattern and try that with some supplies we had around. I think I picked up like 2 things of floss for it. And yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, no, I like this. And then I started getting into bigger projects after that. Do you primarily stitch English or Danish? Now, before you answer, I will explain to the non-stitchers in chat. These are 2 different styles of stitching. Basically, in English, you make each little X individually, Whereas in Danish, you can see me doing it right now, is basically you go across a line doing one leg of the stitch, and then you go back doing the second leg of the stitch. So that's
That
just
is also
two
what I'm
different
doing
methods.
currently.
Yeah, so which one do you usually do?
Definitely more Danish than I do English. I like the satisfaction of going across a row and coming back. It's just the motion feels so fluid. However, they are just pieces that lend themselves to English more. For example, like a full coverage that would have a lot of confetti. I don't imagine that I could do a lot of Danish on. Like there are some colors so far for Unseelie that, you know, the stitches are just so far apart from each other that I would just do them English.
Also did not know that until earlier this year. And the only reason that I remember the difference between the two and which one is which is because I knit English, but I stitch Danish. So that's how I remember which one is which. But yeah, I had no idea that there were different names for those two different methods. But my answer is also pretty much the same as Moon's. I like doing Danish when it's practical. Although I am leaning more towards English. However, I think so you can't really see it, but on big blocks of color like this, I feel like Danish is just a little bit neater when you're doing like a large chunk of colors. But like you said, for full coverage or even some of the smalls that I'm working on, sometimes English is just better for speed and getting around the piece more easily.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I also find that like in certain cases, doing each stitch individually can make the back less bulky because you don't have those long floats going between sections. You know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
If a piece like for example, here between Baffy's eyes, I would be filling in with white. But for me, it wouldn't quite make sense to do Danish like across the eyes, if that makes sense, because then the back of the eyes would just get covered with floss with the white. So I would probably tend to do Danish like around the eyes. So like go up here and then do like all of this and just like, you know, go between without going behind the big chunks.
Yeah,
Because,
like trace
it would make the back
around.
really.
Yeah,
Essentially. Yeah. I like to do what I call or actually what Gwen called Chaos Danish at some point.
Chaos Danish.
Yep, which is essentially like those stitches are not in a straight line, but I will go across all of them with a half stitch and make my way back across with another half stitch, which is actually exactly what I'm doing right now. Yeah. So like there's like some purple in the horn here, and instead of like, I don't know, continuing all the way up, I'm just gonna like continue, go down, go right, and come back to like cross stitch all of that afterwards.
That makes sense.
Because it just makes sense to me to like go back and forth, to travel back and forth instead of traveling from point A to point B.
Yeah. I was, for some sections of this big orange block, I was actually doing English, so just doing one cross at a time, because I was getting a little bit bored, to be honest. And someone had said that when they're doing big chunks of color and they get bored, what they'll do is they'll like stitch like a letter or something, like just stitch some words in and then like fill around them so the words disappear.
Oh,
so I was
that's
like,
cute.
Or like they'll do little shapes and then fill in the shapes and things like that. So I was kind of playing with that, but and like from a distance, from if you're not like, you know, staring at it close like you are when you're stitching it, there's no difference whatsoever. But I can see the difference between the two sections, so I went back to Danish because I think it's a little bit neater. What is your favorite current project to stitch on and why?
My current favorite would have to be Baphomet, because it's kind of closer to what I'm used to in terms of like the amount of colors, the amount of color blocks, like the complexity of the pattern and all that stuff.
Mhm.
And also I'm doing it for a dear friend, so I have like that motivation of like every time I work on it, like I'm thinking about them and it makes me really happy.
That's cute.
What about you?
I know this is going to seem like a weird coincidence, but Those Who Wait, the one that I'm also currently working on, is probably my favorite thing to stitch on at the moment, because it's not my preferred fabric count. It's an 18 count, and I usually go for a 14 count. But I find with the Zweigart, it's soft enough that like I'm not fighting with it. And I don't know what it is, if it's the big blocks of color or just the way that I'm doing it. I get into such a zone with this that I can easily sit here and do 500 stitches without blinking. Like it's so meditative a process for me. But what is your favorite fabric to stitch on and why?
I honestly haven't tried many fabrics yet. I've basically tried 14 count DMC Ada and off-brand Ada, and 20 count Zweigart. Oh no, I've also done 14 count Zweigart as well. I think that's what my the Deadly Aquarium is. But yeah, so I haven't really tried many counts of fabrics or kinds of fabrics. Like I haven't tried linen yet. I haven't tried like even weave. That's pretty much all I've stitched on is Ada of different counts.
Okay. Which count is your favorite though out of the different ones you've tried?
I would say that I think my sweet spot would probably be 18, which I've never stitched on, because it's out of stock everywhere apparently. Like the Easy Grid 18 count, guys, nowhere has it. It's crazy.
It's impossible to find.
So I haven't actually tried it, but like when I stitch on 20 count, I really like how dainty the stitches are and how like easy it is to like make abstraction of the pixels because of how small they are. But it is a bit difficult to get like a when like there are already 3 threads in one hole, getting the 4th one in there is like it jams, it's kind of like tight.
Sure.
So like I think that 18 would be like the perfect sweet spot for me.
Makes sense. I would honestly say so. Like I have tried linen. I've tried 18 count, 16 count, 14 count, 11 count. My sweet spot is 14 count black Ada from Amazon.
From Amazon because it's crunchier.
Yeah, because it's crunchier. It's yeah.
That's another thing as well. Like the softness of the fabric that you like, because I know that some people really love soft fabric. Like linen is very soft. And by soft I mean like how well it holds together, not like how actually like soft it is to the touch. Like there are some there's like some Ada brands that like you hold like a sheet and it just like won't move. Like it's almost like plastic with like how stiff it is.
Like
and then there
really
are other
stands
ones
up on its own.
Yeah, and then there are other ones that are just like
they're drapey.
I don't know, cloth. Yes, drapey is a good term for it. And I think that like DMC is kind of in between. Dawn Man from Amazon is like crunchy.
Yeah.
And then Zweigart is very soft, very drapey. And I think that like I don't really enjoy stitching on the drapey Ada, funnily enough.
Yeah.
I have to have it like very tight in the frame because I don't enjoy when there's give in the fabric.
Which is exactly what I'm running into right now. Like I don't know if you guys can see on the screen, but there's too much give in here. The next favorite is, what is your favorite finish project and why?
Oh, go ahead, because you finished far more projects than I have.
So I actually wasn't sure about this one because I finished a lot of cool stuff. And now I'm completely blanking on every piece I've ever finished. I think the finish that I'm most proud of is Deadly Aquarium, because it's the biggest one and also something that I like kept up momentum on. But there have been a bunch of smaller finishes that I've really enjoyed as well. The other one that was just like a huge piece and I was super proud of myself for finishing was my snake and lavender wreath from Wild Bluebell Patterns.
I remember.
Yeah, so I'd say that's probably my favorite, like, finished up and mounted and hanging cross stitch piece.
But yes, my favorite finish I think would have to be I basically only have 3 finishes, like fully 3 FFOs. Like, I'm so bad because I've finished more pieces than that, but
well, finishes or FFO. So FFO is a fully finished object. So like we consider cross stitch finished when you're done the stitching, but fully finished is like when it's in a frame or when it's been made into a pillow or a pincushion. Like whenever it's been finished into its final display form is when it's fully finished. So that's the difference between an FO and an FFO.
Yeah. Okay. So then in that case, my favorite fully finished would have to be my Gengar and Clefairy piece, because to this day it is the biggest piece that I've finished. It was not that big, like all things considered, like 14,000 stitches. But it was my
really
second
big
project. Yeah, it is. It was my second project. Like, I don't know what I was thinking. I was just thinking, like, I want to cross stitch something for my friend's birthday. And in August, I started something for, was it in August? I think it was in July. Maybe July. I'll give myself some grace, but it was in July, and I told myself I want to cross stitch something for my friend's birthday, who her birthday is September 28th. And I picked that pattern for some godly God fucking knows why. I was just like, this is good. I'm gonna stitch all of it.
Yeah, that's the queer audacity and not knowing.
Yep, it was a lot of stitching. But I really loved it when I finished it. I was really proud of it because it was my second piece. It was the first piece I was framing, and she really loved it. So I think that, like, obviously that's a good memory for me. And my favorite finish that hasn't been made into an FFO yet would be, I suppose, Coffee Bob. Okay, I think that I've stitched it on stream before, but I just love the image of him. Like, it's basically like a coffee cup pouring into a skeleton head with an open brain cap. And we love Coffee Bob. I want to frame him and put him in my kitchen sometime.
Here's one for both of us. How many whips do you currently have? So I have Bella. I have 3 whips that I am actively working on. 1 shop sample, which I don't really consider a whip because it's more like work related. 1 shop sample, and then I have 3 which are in deep hibernation, probably never going to get finished. So I consider myself to have 3 to 4 whips at any given moment.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is impressive because when you started streaming, we knew you to be a whip hoarder.
A couple years ago, I was known as the king of an unsustainable number of whips. So the fact that I have gotten down to 4-ish whips and stayed there for a while, like, if you consider the ones that I started but I'm never going to finish, I do have 7, which is not a lot, but it seems like a lot. But yeah.
It's funny because we were talking about this at some point, but like the knitting community's version of too many whips versus the cross-stitch community version of Too Many Whips is very different.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, it is. Like in the knitting community, it's very common to only have 1 or 2 whips. Whereas if you have more than like 5 or 6, that's considered a lot of whips. Whereas in the cross stitch community, it's more common to have between 30 and 100. So,
which always baffles me. Like, that's such an
right?
insane number.
And Beyonce says, out of curiosity, why will you never finish them? I fell out of love with them. Celtic Witch, she's her own story. But the other 2 are Detective Todeschi from Mama Witch. And I kind of started him for the sake of having a new start on the Wheel of Whips, and I wasn't really feeling it. I might at some point in the future restart him, but I'm only like 100 stitches in, so I'm just gonna... the other one is a sampler, the Spooktacular sampler. And I don't know, I just don't like it anymore. There's something about the way that the house in the middle and the grass, like, I haven't thrown it out. I might pull it out at some future point and see what I can do to change the pattern to make it like enjoyable again. But at the moment, I'm just not concerned about it. Like, I'm not weighing on me. I'm not feeling any need to do anything with them. So yeah, so how many whips do you have, Moon?
I actually whipped down a bit recently. I had Baffy, Silly Mates, Deadly Aquarium, Unseelie, plus some more. But I've actually finished the gecko that I was waiting for Floss. So that I gotta finish there. I finished... Apologies, I yawned.
I was gonna say bless you. It sounded like a little tiny sneeze.
I had a gift stitching that I had in progress and I hadn't touched in months, so I finished that as well. So that was 2 like small finishes that I could knock off my list. And I'm making so much progress on Baffy currently and on Silly Mates, which are going to be done very soon. So I'm excited to remove that from my list of whips, have those finished. So currently what I have as whips are Silly Mates, Baffy, Unseelie, and Deadly Aquarium, because I haven't started Rose Library yet. So I only have 4 whips right now.
Yeah, so we have about the same number of whips.
Yeah.
Like, if you consider only the ones that I'm doing actively. Quarter Stitch raises a good point. Part of me wonders if the pressure to show new things and keep up with popular new patterns leads Flosstubers to have more than if they weren't on Flosstube. I think that is definitely a phenomenon. I think it is something that I fell victim to when I was starting my channel. There is definitely a pressure to produce. And I do a Flosstube episode every 2 weeks, and I haven't really talked about this, but I might be moving to a once every month schedule instead of every 2 weeks. But there definitely is, like, if I feel like I haven't accomplished anything in the 2 weeks, I feel like I have to like rush and finish something really quickly so I have something to show. So I think that definitely does play a part in it. And also, if you watch a lot of Flosstube, you see a lot of beautiful patterns that you really need to start right away. So I think it's a function of both needing to show something new and also a function of watching a lot of Flosstube.
Before DH got me into the multi-whip camp, I was a serial monogamous stitcher, just like Toot. I would stitch on one thing only at a time and finish it before I started anything else. And the only time that I hadn't done that beforehand was when I was waiting for Floss, I believe, for my Gengar piece. So I started my mushroom piece. That was the one that I had queued after. In the meantime, so at that point I had 2 whips, but one I had started only because I was missing some floss, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that the influence of like
Others.
it's totally okay to have some more whips and look at all those beautiful patterns is
I know.
definitely
Yeah, it's definitely a thing.
pure pressure.
What is your plan of attack for working on multiple whips?
I don't
Okay.
have one. Yeah, the reason why I think I ended up with so many whips is because I had something that I wasn't finished with and I wanted to do another thing, or like I had a project that required for me to follow the pattern closely, but I wanted to take something that I could be a bit more on the go. So that was my goal, to have like maybe like a few but not too many. And then Deadly Aquarium kind of like threw a wrench in my plans, in the sense that like I wanted to stay on schedule, and for to be able to stay on schedule, I basically had to stitch exclusively on Deadly Aquarium. So my other whips were not getting any work done on them, and I was getting a bit frustrated about that because my plan of having different whips that one I could take on the go, or like work on if I felt like doing a bit more color changes, or work on more if I had more color blocks that I wanted to work on, kind of fell off. And so I'm just currently like whipping down, finishing the projects that I have so that I can get back to I suppose a more manageable for me a number of whips.
That makes sense.
So yeah, I don't really have a technique to manage whips because I never thought that I would have this many.
Very true. As for
what
myself, I'm kind of the same way in that I like to have like, I don't want to have multiple whips of the same type. I like having like a smaller one and a bigger one, and one that's simpler and one that's more difficult, that kind of thing. So really I kind of stitch on vibes, because I know, but at the same time I know that I just started, for example, the Swamp Coven one, and that's a really fun project, but I started it because I didn't have a small project. But if I work on that exclusively, I'll finish it in like 5 days, and then I'll be right back in the boat I was before. You know what I mean? So, I do try and get a bit of a rotation going. One thing that my community does that we've really embraced is the Wheel of Whips, which is basically like you put. I did it with a wheel spinner, but now we have a channel in my server that's like a random number generator. So you have all of your current works in progress or chores. We also like interspersed it with chores on a wheel, and then you spin it, and whatever the wheel dictates is what you do, what you work on. And thank you, Toot, for putting up the link to the Discord there. So yeah, so now you can do that like right inside my Discord because a lot of people are using the same system. So I do that sometimes if like I'm just not sure what I'm going to work on. But generally I try to work on everything in a day, or everything in, or at least get quite a few stitches in a week, without letting anything really languish.
I see.
So like Wheel of Whips and then vibes, I think would be my answer to this question. And then we got a really good one from Des, which I found which I liked. And that question was, when you get in a rut or an artist block, what are some things you do to overcome it?
For me, usually when I get in a rut, there's a reason for the rut. Sometimes it's because I don't have the energy required to work on a project, which makes me feel like frustrated because it's like, I want to do this thing, why can't I do it? And so that's usually like the reason why I don't why I struggle with like blocks, really. And then it's more like when I realize that is the reason why, it's kind of like, okay, Moon, look at what other needs that you have that aren't currently met and focus on that, because as much as cross stitch is one of your special interests, you can't like just dive into that if your body is tired, if your body is hungry, if you know.
That is such a healthy way to handle it.
So most of the time that's why I get into ruts of like, I want to do cross stitch but I don't know what to work on, or like I want to work on cross stitch but I also don't feel like it at the same time, and it's like the frustration of like I want to do something but I can't, or like I want to do something but it's like nothing's working. That is usually why. The other thing that I've noticed is it kind of like is a subcategory of executive dysfunction. Oh, hi, Anna. And that is more like, oh, like I'm looking at this project and I know that this project would benefit from being worked on, but I don't feel like working on it. Or like, I really want to work on this project, but something is stopping me right now. And then again, it's kind of like trying to look at what the deeper reason why I feel that way, which for Deadly Aquarium, I haven't touched it in like literal months. And you know the reason why?
Why?
I have to move the frame.
Yeah,
so I know that
that's a familiar
like I'm in a rut.
struggle.
I'm in a rut with Deadly Aquarium solely because I don't want to move the frame. So I know that once I get that done, I'll be okay with it.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I don't want to touch it because I have to move the freaking frame.
So Moon's answer was like introspection and self-care.
Yeah.
That's a great answer, and I feel a little bit silly because my answer is not that.
That is perfectly fine. Because for me, like the things that I work on, right, are like cross stitch projects, whereas you of course have also designing projects that require different creative juices.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to hear how that is for you.
So, I mean, sometimes it is something as simple as I need to move the frame and that's why I don't want to work on it. In which case, like, I just have to like move the frickin' frame. Which I usually get accomplished by complaining about it to somebody and then doing it. The other thing that I do, and like this is for all crafts, if I start to feel kind of my crafty mojo waning, I will not try and force it. I won't pick up a project. Some people say start something new, but I find that that's really iffy, hit or miss. What I do is I go through my supplies. I like do a tidy of my supplies. I reorganize stuff. I, see what I'm missing, do some cataloging, do some inventorying, make sure all my notes are up to date. I'll go through my patterns and make sure those are all up to date and in the right place. And then usually just handling my supplies and taking a look at like the cool stuff I could make. Usually that kind of shakes something loose for me. In terms of like, oh yeah, I really did want to work on this, or oh, I'm really excited to get to use this supply, so I should work on this thing. So that's kind of what I do if I know I want to craft something, but I'm not feeling it, but I know I want to feel it. I'll go and I'll play with my stuff.
That's really cool because I also I suppose like subconsciously do this because I've definitely like before like been like, oh, like I would like to cross stitch but I'm not feeling it, so then I will reorganize my floss boxes, because the way that I keep my floss is I have a work in progress floss box and then I have my stash. So like I'll look at my whip box and like put things away and like stuff like that, and just that brings me some satisfaction from,
because you're kind of still working on the craft that you enjoy without
exactly
working on it. What is a designer that you haven't stitched a piece from yet, but you really want to?
For me, that would be Mama Stitch Cross Stitch. There are so many of their patterns that are absolutely gorgeous and completely my aesthetic.
Mm-hmm.
And I
You
just
haven't done a
haven't
Mama Witch
gotten
yet?
around. I haven't at all.
Yeah, that's surprising to me because we have so many of them.
I know, we do, but I haven't touched one of their designs yet. The Banjo Possum that I'm gonna stitch for Anna is gonna be my first one, actually.
Oh, nice. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, Mama Witch is so good. Like, I really love her patterns. And she's got such a wide range of topics, too, that I think pretty much anyone could find something they would like to stitch from her.
Absolutely.
She's also a cinnamon roll. I've talked to her a few times over Instagram DMs.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're in her Patreon, you can message her there. And she's just really nice. For me, it's actually Pigeon Coop Knits. Pigeon Coop Designs, not knits. Wow, what am I saying anymore? Early. Pigeon Coop Designs. Have you seen any of his stuff?
I don't think I have, no.
He's a male designer. He's from Ontario. I believe he's from Toronto. Like, I think he's from Toronto just based on the number of Toronto specific patterns he has in his shop. But he just put out a book. It's called like Stitching the Forest or something like that.
Ooh.
And I really like his whole aesthetic and vibe because he does like nature and forest stuff, but he incorporates trying to like quilting type motifs, or like for me I would say it's more like Norwegian sweater motifs into the landscapes and the birds and things like that. It's a really cool aesthetic, and I'd love to stitch one of his pieces, but I haven't yet. Like, I've been eyeing his stuff. I think I would want to get my hands on a copy of the book because I've seen I saw a flip through of it and it looked really good. So I requested that the Toronto Library get a copy of the book so that I can borrow it. But
very smart.
Yeah, I don't know if that'll actually happen or not, but you can always request. We're going to get wrapped up here in a few minutes, but there is one more question that I would like to ask you. And I think this is a good one to end on. And that is, what tips would you give to a newbie?
I would say don't be afraid to tackle bigger pieces or pieces that look complicated because you just started. Because if you're someone who's very driven by motivation or dopamine, then doing that one piece that you really want to do is what is going to get you to improve. Because if you, I don't know, go and do a smaller piece just to practice, it's not going to feel as good. It's not going to feel as interesting as, you're not going to feel as passionate about it. So I think that, like, you know, even if it's a big piece, even if it's daunting, it's your first one, give yourself the right to start it. It's okay.
Yeah, I would definitely agree.
That would be my tip.
I would definitely agree. Like, you're just making little X's on fabric. That's it. The way that you make those X's is the way that you learn. I think my biggest tip for newbies, and like, there's so many tips we could give about like, oh, use this supplier, try this, or try this designer. I think my biggest tip is fuck around and find out. Like, don't be afraid to try stuff. If you have to rip it out, you have to rip it out. If you cut the fabric too small, you cut the fabric too small. Don't be afraid to mess around and try different things, try different styles, try different techniques. Like we mentioned, Danish versus English. If you've only ever stitched Danish, try English. If you've only ever done full coverage, try doing a small. If you've only ever worked on 14 count, try doing a different count. Like, mess around and find out what works for you, and don't be afraid to experiment even if you're gonna fail, because failure is just the way that we learn and the way that we figure out ways that things don't work for us. So yeah, I always say, like, just try it, just mess around. Like, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work, and try it again. So
And
so,
yeah, like it's especially true because like I think for many hobbies, we're kind of always worried about wasting material.
Mhm.
And like for sure it's still true about cross stitch, but give yourself that space because you know, like a skein of floss is affordable and it's
Yep.
not one piece of a 6 thread floss that's going to set you back, you know? So
Yeah,
give yourself that
exactly.
room to experiment.
Yeah, just mess
Fury
around.
says, I love that advice. Mess around and find out.
Yep. And that's honestly my advice for pretty much anyone trying any craft, is like, just do a little bit of basic research first, but don't be afraid to dive in. Just mess around and find out. My friends, I will see you in the Discord. I will see you in the coffee shop. I will see you in the comment section. I'll see you in the videos. But most importantly, my friends, I will see you in my heart. All right. Bye, YouTube. Bye-bye.